Okay, so 1 in 5 people who get tattoos, end up regretting them.
Wow.
And it's like $100 million industry to like get rid of them.
Really?
So it's kind of it's a big thing, huh?
Yeah, big time.
And it's interesting because like, there's that whole no regrets thing that you see on like bumper stickers and stuff.
Right.
Like it's some kind of life philosophy.
Totally.
But the research we're looking at today is like,
Yeah.
we all have them.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Uh-huh.
So it's kind of like, are we fooling ourselves?
Mm-hmm.
And, the interesting thing about regret is that it's actually kind of a powerful human thing.
It is powerful. And we tend to view it as a negative.
Yeah.
But, the more we dig into this, you'll see how it really shapes how we think, how we learn, how we grow.
Yeah. And what's so cool about this deep dive is that we're looking at the powerofregret.pdf.
Great source.
And it's not about like, sitting there and crying about the past or whatever.
Yeah.
It's really about learning how regret shapes us.
Yes.
And how we can use it to make better choices in the future and, just kind of understand it better.
For sure. And to really connect this to you, the listener, I think what's really fascinating is when you think back on your own life.
Yeah.
And those moments where you've experienced regret,
Mm-hmm.
the author whose work we're diving into points out that those moments can actually reveal a lot about what you care about most deeply and the kind of person that you are, or even the person you aspire to be.
Right.
It's not about beating yourself up for those past choices. It's more about understanding the messages within those experiences.
Yeah. And one of the things that's so amazing about this research is like how much went into it.
Right.
It's not just like a quick, survey monkey thing. It's like,
No, massive.
it's huge. So they had the American Regret Project, which surveyed over 4,400 people.
It's a lot.
Like a real, slice of Americana.
Yeah.
Then they went global with the World Regret Survey.
Wow.
Over 16,000 regrets from 105 countries. And then they even did like in-depth interviews
Oh, wow.
to get into the nitty-gritty.
I mean, that's incredible data right there.
It's huge.
Yeah.
So what's cool about this is that it's not just one perspective. It's like worldwide.
Yeah.
So it's like this universal human emotion.
And what I think is really cool about that is, the richness and diversity of that data.
Yeah.
It's not just one cultural perspective or one type of regret. We're really getting a broad spectrum of the human experience.
Right.
And that allows us to see these significant patterns in how this feeling manifests across different cultures and backgrounds.
So some of the big takeaways from all of this research.
Yeah.
Regret is fundamental to being human.
Okay.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then, it's not just a drag. It can actually be a powerful motivator for positive change.
I like that.
And then there's this concept of the deep structure of regret that's going to be fun to dive into.
For sure.
And then, the takeaway is that there are healthy ways to kind of engage with your regret.
Right.
And learn from it without letting it consume you.
So that central idea that regret makes us human, regret makes us better. It's powerful stuff.
Yeah.
It really kind of forces us to challenge how we usually think about these feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your thoughts on that statement?
I think it is counterintuitive.
Right.
Because, we're always taught to be happy.
Right. Strive for happiness.
Yeah. Positive emotions.
Exactly.
So regret is like the opposite of that.
Yeah.
But I think what he's trying to say is that our capacity for regret is actually what makes us, thoughtful beings that can learn from our mistakes and imagine, a different future.
Right.
So it's that ability to look back and say, oh, I should have done this differently, that allows us to actually do things differently next time.
It's like it speaks to our ability to self-reflect and our desire to improve ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And I think a great example of this that the author brings up is this anecdote about Edith Piaf.
Oh, yeah.
The legendary singer.
Hello.
She famously said, "I regret nearly every big decision I have ever made. I apparently suck at the big decisions. Little decisions are a snap."
Wow.
So here we have this incredibly successful artist
Right.
who felt this weight of regret over her major life choices. But then the author poses this idea that every damn thing you do in life can pay off for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it really makes you think about the role of regret in shaping our paths.
Yeah, that PF quote is so wild because, she's so successful.
It is.
And like, a lot of people would say she's like really accomplished a lot,
Of course.
but she still feels this regret.
Right.
And I wonder if like, that constant like self-assessment,
Yeah.
even if it was like regret, helped her grow artistically
That's a really interesting thought.
and connect with people.
It's that constant cycle of making a decision, seeing what happens, reflecting with maybe a little bit of regret. And maybe that was just part of her creative process and helped her connect with the human condition.
Totally. So let's get into like the process of regret.
Yeah. How does this work? Well, the research points to two key things that we all have.
Okay.
The ability to mentally travel back in time and revisit the past.
Okay.
And the ability to rewrite those events and imagine, like, what if?
So it's like time travel and a rewrite.
Right.
Cool.
And it's important to remember that regret isn't just sadness or disappointment about a situation.
Right.
It's really about that comparison between what is and what might have been.
Okay.
And a really poignant example that the author uses is this 52-year-old woman who followed her dad's wishes on her education instead of pursuing her own passions. And she might not be, miserable, but the regret comes in when she thinks back and imagines, what if I had done what I wanted to do?
Right.
How would my life be different?
Wow.
So that active comparison is really the core of regret.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because it's like, we have this agency where we could have made different choices.
Right.
And so it's like, well, what if I had done that?
That what if is huge, right?
Yeah.
And that leads us to two types of counterfactual thinking.
Okay.
Downward, or at least, and upward, or if only.
Okay.
Two ways our minds process the what ifs.
So like the downward ones are the at least ones.
Right.
Are those like the ones where you're like, oh, at least it wasn't worse?
Exactly. That sense of relief that things could have been worse, like dodging a bullet.
I get it.
Great example, the Olympic medalists.
Oh, yeah.
The bronze medalists were often thinking, at least I got a medal.
Okay.
At least I didn't fall. At least I performed decently.
Right.
They're comparing themselves to those who didn't make the podium.
Right.
And finding comfort in that.
Yeah.
But the silver medalists?
Yeah.
Totally different.
If only I had done this a little differently, I would have had the goals.
Exactly. If only I had pushed harder. If only my training had been slightly different. If only I had slept better. They're focused on that tiny margin between them and gold. And research shows that this upward comparison actually leads to more disappointment than the bronze medalists.
It's so crazy because like you would think that like the silver medalists would be happy.
Of course, they're on the podium.
Right.
But they're so close to the top
that
if only just consumes them.
Wow. And what's even crazier is that like in our daily lives, the if onlys actually are way more common.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Like way more than at least thoughts.
Yeah.
Some studies even say 80% or more of our counterfactual thoughts are these if-onlys.
Really?
Yeah.
It's wild because like you would think that...
You'd think we'd want to feel good.
Right.
But maybe our brains are wired for learning and improvement.
Okay.
And by focusing on the if-onlys, we can actually, learn from what we did wrong.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Think about when you've tried to learn a new skill.
Yeah.
Haven't you had those moments where you're like, if only I had practiced more?
Totally.
And the next time you practice harder? So it's like that little sting can actually motivate us.
Yeah. And there's like a really clear exception to this. Like the tsunami survivors, they had a lot more, at least, comparisons.
Yeah, they were just grateful to be alive.
Yeah.
They weren't dwelling on what they lost.
Right.
So when we escape danger, it's at least.
Right.
But everyday stuff, it's all about the if-onlys.
It's so crazy.
So that really highlights that learning function of regret.
Yeah.
Our brains are always evaluating our experiences, not just for comfort, but for future improvement.
Yeah.
And the author talks about this study with anagram puzzles. Participants who thought in terms of if-onlys about their initial attempts actually got better at solving the next anagrams.
So they were thinking like, if only I had gotten that one faster.
Exactly.
And then they got faster.
They did. It's like that regret motivates us.
Yeah.
Signals to our brain to do better.
Yeah, that's so cool.
And another fascinating experiment with blackjack. People who were told they would play multiple rounds had way more if-only thoughts after the first round compared to those who thought it was their last hand.
Wow.
And the group that anticipated playing again, they really dug into those regrets.
Oh, cool.
They analyzed their strategies, figured out what went wrong, and they used that to play better in the next rounds. But the one-and-done players, they were all about, at least just wanting to feel good, even if they didn't play well.
So basically, it's like the knowing that you're going to play again makes you more willing to learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, and more open to learning from your regrets.
Yeah. So cool.
And, regret isn't just about motivation.
Right.
It's connected to meaning.
Oh, wow.
It's pretty deep.
Yeah.
When we think about past choices, like where we went to college or who we became friends with,
Right.
and we consider what could have been, those choices somehow feel more significant.
So it's like, like you said, like the what ifs.
Yes.
Like, if I hadn't gone to this college,
Exactly.
I wouldn't meet these people.
Right.
But the fact that I did makes it more meaningful.
And there's a study from Northwestern University that showed this by mentally exploring alternative paths.
Yeah.
The choices we actually made felt more important.
Like we own them more.
Yes. Yeah. And the author argues that regret specifically can make us think more about what really matters.
Oh, interesting.
Think about the classic midlife crisis.
Yeah.
People look back, identify regrets,
right,
and use that to change their priorities, to align their life with what they really value.
Yeah.
And the World Regret Survey had this story of Abby Henderson, who's a behavioral health researcher.
Mm-hmm.
She regretted not spending more time with her grandparents when she was younger. As a kid, she resented them, but as an adult, she wishes she had those moments back.
Wow.
So that regret shows how much she values family. Is what's meaningful to her. Wow, that's such a good point, because it's like it does highlight what you really value.
And what we might take for granted.
Yeah.
But remember, while regret can be good,
yeah,
too much of it can be bad.
Right. We can't just, be sad all the time.
Exactly. We can't just follow every feeling.
Yeah.
Especially regret.
Okay.
Too much can lead to rumination.
What's rumination again?
It's that dwelling on past mistakes.
Oh, yeah.
Over and over.
Okay.
And it can really hurt our well-being.
Makes sense.
And prevent us from moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Studies have even linked it to depression, anxiety, PTSD.
Wow.
People who ruminate have lower life satisfaction.
Right.
They struggle to cope.
Yeah.
It's a vicious cycle.
So it's like the regret makes you ruminate more and the rumination makes you regret more.
Exactly.
So not good.
Not good at all.
So let's get into this deep structure of regret.
Yes. Let's unpack that.
It's a cool concept.
And the author uses this analogy from Noam Chomsky's theories about language.
So Chomsky argued that beneath the surface of language, like the words and grammar, there's a deeper structure, a set of rules in our brains. Different languages might seem different, but at this deeper level, they share principles.
Okay, I'm following you.
Now, the author applies this to regret.
Okay.
So the things we regret, like our career, our relationships, our education, that's the surface.
Okay.
But underneath, there's something deeper driving those regrets.
Okay, so it's not just the thing itself.
Right.
It's the reason why you regret it.
It's the motivation, the aspiration, the unmet need.
That's really interesting.
And by studying tons of regrets, the author found 4 categories of this deep structure.
Okay, lay it on me.
The first one is foundation regrets.
Okay, foundation regrets.
Think of the ant and the grasshopper.
Okay.
These are about failing to plan.
Okay.
Choosing immediate gratification over long-term benefit.
So like, you eat all your Halloween candy now. And then later you're like, ugh, I wish I had saved some.
Exactly. Or if only I had saved more money when I was younger. If only I had studied harder in school.
Oh, so it's like those things where you're like, man, I wish I had, laid the groundwork.
Precisely. It's that lack of responsibility early on.
Okay.
And the consequences build up over time.
Yeah.
Like the author shared a story of a guy named Jason who said he had a lot of cavalier moments, just saying so what to everything.
Right.
But looking back, he called it 25 years of fiddling.
Wow.
Because he didn't prepare.
Yeah, like, you keep kicking the can down the road.
Right, and then you run out of road.
Right.
And then the second category is boldness regrets. Boldness.
Okay.
These are the missed opportunities.
Okay.
The times we were too afraid to take a risk, to really go for it.
So like, if only I had, joined the circus.
Exactly. Or if only I had asked that person out. If only I had started that business. If only I had traveled more.
Oh, so it's like those times when you're like, man, I should have gone for it.
It's that fear of failure or rejection holding us back. Like the story of Bruce.
What happened to Bruce?
He met this amazing woman on a train in Belgium.
Okay.
Instant connection, but she had to leave.
Oh.
And he didn't follow her.
Oh, no.
Too uncertain, too afraid.
Yeah.
Years later, he still thinks about her.
Oh, that's so sad.
And he said, "It was truly as if we had known each other our whole lives, and I have never felt that way again."
Wow.
That feeling of a lost connection.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
And, Work is a big place for boldness regrets.
Oh, yeah, totally.
This woman from South Africa in the survey said her biggest regret was not having the courage to be more bold earlier in my career and caring too much what other people thought of me.
It's so true, though, because it's like so many people, I feel like, hold back.
Yeah.
Because of what other people think.
It's a powerful force.
Yeah.
So moving on to moral regrets. This is when we do something that goes against our conscience.
Okay.
When we hurt someone or act unfairly.
Got it.
It might feel good in the moment.
Yeah.
But later it eats at us.
Right.
We think, if only I had done the right thing.
Yeah.
And the author talks about Jonathan Haidt's The Righteous Mind.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
Which explores morality.
Oh.
And moral regrets often happen when our desires clash with our morals. Like the person who bullied a Vietnamese kid. Or the woman who nicknamed a classmate Ziggy.
Oof.
And Steve's reflection on bullying is interesting.
Okay, tell me about it.
He knew it was wrong while he was doing it.
Wow.
But he did it anyway for attention. But he regretted it more because he'd been bullied himself.
So it's like he knew how bad it felt, and then he did it anyway.
It's that disconnect between knowing and doing.
Yeah.
And even being a bystander can cause moral regret.
Oh, wow.
Like you see something bad happening and you don't do anything.
Right.
It can haunt you. Wow.
And then there's Kaylin, who confessed to cheating, trying to rebuild trust. And Joel, who felt guilty for betraying his vows.
Yeah.
It's that long process of dealing with moral failures.
Trying to make things right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And finally, we come to connection regrets.
Connection regrets.
The biggest category.
Really?
It's about broken or neglected relationships.
It makes sense. We're social creatures.
Right.
Like we need each other.
And these regrets are like, if only I had stayed in touch with that friend. If only I had forgiven that family member.
Yeah.
If only I had expressed my feelings before it was too late. It's about the pain of lost connection.
Yeah.
Like Cheryl, who lost touch with her friend Jen 25 years ago and still thinks about her.
Yeah.
And Amy, whose friend Deepa passed away.
Oh, no.
And she never got to say goodbye.
That's so sad.
She kept putting off the call, thinking there would be more time. It's a reminder that our time with loved ones is precious.
And Jennifer, who reflected on a lost friendship and hopes to reconnect.
It's so true, though, because it's like those connections are so important.
And the Harvard Grant study.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
They found that happiness is love. Full stop.
Wow.
So connection regrets hit us hard.
Yeah, because we need those connections.
We do.
So now that we've gone through those 4 categories.
Foundation, boldness, moral, connection.
Yeah.
What do we do with all this regret?
Yeah, how do we deal with it?
How do we learn from it?
Right.
Well, the author talks about this guy, Jeff.
Okay.
Who had a no regrets tattoo.
Oh, wow. The irony.
Right. But his actual regrets led him to make big changes in his life.
Really?
And he even got the tattoo removed.
Wow. So he really did have regrets.
He did.
And he owned them.
He said, regret sucks, but I like that better than people who say no regrets.
So he's saying it's better to acknowledge them.
Yeah, to face them head on.
And then you can grow from them.
Exactly.
Well, yeah.
So the author suggests a 2-part process. Okay.
First, relive and relieve.
Okay.
This is all about self-disclosure.
So like talking about it?
Yes. Yeah. Talk to a friend, a therapist, write in a journal.
Get out.
Research shows it helps.
Why?
Like Sanjali Ramirski's work.
Okay.
It's better than bottling it up.
Yeah, makes sense.
You know, when we talk about it or write about it, it becomes less overwhelming.
Yeah.
We can look at it more objectively.
So step 2.
Self-compassion.
Okay, I've heard of this.
It's Kristen Neff's work.
Yeah.
It's about treating ourselves with kindness, like we would treat a friend who made a mistake.
Yeah.
We're all imperfect.
Right.
We all screw up.
Totally.
So be kind to yourself.
You don't beat yourself up.
Exactly. It's not about excusing our actions.
Right.
It's about accepting that we're human.
Okay, I like that.
And the author also suggests self-distancing.
Self-distancing.
Create some space from the regret.
Okay.
Think about it from your future self's perspective.
Interesting.
Or imagine an outside observer.
That helps you gain perspective.
So it's like you're not so emotionally involved.
Right. You can see the bigger picture.
Learn from it.
Exactly. Like that. Now, how about using regret to make better decisions?
Oh, that's interesting.
It's about thinking ahead.
Okay.
Anticipating future regret.
So, like, if I do this, will I regret it later?
Exactly. And use that to guide your choice.
Mm-hmm.
And for everyday decisions, the author suggests satisficing. Make a decent choice and move on.
Don't overthink it.
Don't waste energy on small stuff.
Save it for the big stuff.
Right. The things that really matter.
Okay.
And it's cool that the author shares their own regrets about their education career connections. Times they weren't bold.
Makes it real.
It does.
Like they've been there.
And they say, regret makes me human, regret makes me better, regret gives me hope.
I like that.
So as we wrap up, think about your own regrets. Maybe there's one that's been bugging you.
Mm-hmm.
And now you can see it differently.
Right.
Maybe it holds some wisdom, some motivation for change.
What about you?
I encourage you to think about a specific if only.
Okay.
What does it teach you about yourself?
Right.
Or maybe there's a regret you've been avoiding.
Yeah.
Could self-compassion help you with that?
That's a good point.
Where do your biggest regrets fall? In those 4 categories.
Right.
What does that say about your values?
Mm-hmm.
How do you usually react to regret?
Do
you ruminate or do you learn?
It's a good question.
We hope this deep dive has given you a new way to think about regret. It's not just bad, it can be a source of growth.
Totally.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening.